Hello, and welcome to this special recorded event, Decision 2024, Your Voices, Your Future. My name is Tom Guevara. I'm director of the IU Public Policy Institute, and I'll be your host as we hear from the three candidates vying to be elected as Indiana's next governor. It's an incredible honor to moderate such a critical discussion about the future of our state. Much of the work and thanks go to the staff of the IU Public Policy Institute and the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs for making this event possible. This is the fourth time our institute, which is part of the Paul H. O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, has hosted this forum, and I am pleased to participate in the conversation. I also would like to thank the Herron School of Art and Design for allowing us to record this forum in their beautiful school. I'm here because I'm a Hoosier who wants to see Indiana thrive in every way possible. In fact, all three of our guests share this desire for our state. I would like to thank our candidates, former Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Jennifer McCormick, U.S. Senator Mike Braun, and Mr. Donald Rainwater for their participation and ideas. Many critical questions and issues will be raised during my discussion with the candidates. Public discourse is one of America's most proud traditions, and I am so pleased that you are joining us to hear from our candidates. Each candidate will be with me individually for approximately 1/2 hour without the usual trappings of partisan elections. This is not a debate, but rather a discussion about their vision for our state. Earlier this year, the Public Policy Institute embarked on a process of drafting a series of policy briefs that cover critical topics that impact Hoosiers on a daily basis. I will be speaking with the candidates on a number of these important issues, including but not limited to childcare and healthcare, workforce development, innovation and technology, and community resiliency. I'll be asking questions that have been derived from this work, with the advice of faculty members and students at the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Indianapolis and Bloomington, as well as expert authors who have collaborated with us. With the 24-hour news cycle and social media at everyone's fingertips, it can be easy to focus on headlines and not substance. This forum is designed to be different. The goal will be to proceed in a conversational tone with the spirit of open inquiry, in keeping with the mission of the Public Policy Institute. We will hear from the next governor of Indiana on important issues that we all hear about regularly and the Policy Institute studies every day. I look forward to a spirited discussion about the future of our state, and I appreciate you being here to be part of the conversation. Please welcome the Republican nominee for governor, U.S. Senator Mike Braun. Senator, thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
So let's go ahead and begin. Let's talk first about public institutions. During the last 3 years, the Gallup organization has reported a large decrease in the public's confidence in our most important federal government institutions. While Indiana state government may not face quite the same loss of confidence as federal institutions, it also is likely not immune to it. What do you think can be done to raise Hoosiers' confidence that our state government can effectively address their needs?
So let's talk about the national scene first. I've been there 5.5 years, and that definitely I think it's valid to wonder what's happening there, from the basic functionality day to day to the fact that many folks have wondering, can it be fixed? I think it's a lot different. I spent 3 years in our state legislature and didn't sense any of that back in 15, 16, and 17. The real, I think, solutions to a lot of the issues we deal with there, which are contentious, ideological, hard to get 60 senators to agree on anything. Here it's a simple majority, so you don't have to cross that threshold. And you're talking about more kitchen table stuff. I went there hoping to weigh in on healthcare, reformed it in my own business many years ago. Education, the two issues that, if nothing else is going on, most important to families. A lot of that is done at the state level. Healthcare has evolved to where there's a big national presence. You look at the other things I hear about, affordable housing, Childcare, rural broadband, now cost of electricity, the availability of it, and of course water. So those are issues that get a lot more to where you take away a lot of where the institutions are more about getting things done. Out there, it's a different dynamic.
Economic research shows small and new businesses create most new jobs. In 2022, the Indiana Community Action Poverty Institute found low-wage jobs dominate in rural areas. Although not a universal solution, entrepreneurship can lead to more jobs, lower income inequality, and build wealthier communities. What policies or programs can we implement or support to help Hoosiers who want to start a business?
Well, I didn't know I was one of them, an entrepreneur, until I decided not to go to Wall Street many years ago, because finance was my cup of tea. I was then had to make a decision, well, what do you do if you want to start your own business? Well, my wife kind of made that for me. She wanted her own store, originally a clothing store, until one of her friends started about the 7th or 8th one in a town of 8,000. We come from a big Catholic community. Remember, we almost needed a U-Haul to haul home our wedding presents. So she opened up a home accessory and gift store. It's been her only job, is that store, 505 Main Street, half block south of the courthouse. So we lived that. We know what it can do. It's a blue collar job mostly because it's your main source of income. Most often you don't scale it into a larger enterprise, but it's the heartbeat of the country. It's what we were founded upon. And I remember when I worked for our local kitchen cabinet company for 3 years, but was still so anxious. The guy wanted me to hang around and maybe run it someday. I went to the first place. It was a wobbly enterprise. It sold mostly to farmers, and it was survival mode for 3 to 4 years. That was 6 months before the farm crisis. I learned more there than I did getting a fancy MBA. Small business and finding a way to help them, entrepreneurs, fertilizes a broad field. It does it across the state, and it would beg the question, do we need to spend more time there versus on trying to, hook the whales that everyone's looking at? And that would be kind of a part of what we've done recently. I think you need to do some of that. But I come from Main Street. That's where I built my enterprise. It grew to a regional and then national company. Blessed 3 of our 4 kids run it now. That's the American dream. So I'll know what to do there to help Main Street, small businesses, entrepreneurs.
Evidence shows that technological innovation elevates wages and incomes and our overall standard of living. Indiana has a large manufacturing industry that employs about 20% of our state's workforce. But innovation and technological advancement in manufacturing is lagging, particularly in rural areas. What can we do to increase opportunities for Hoosiers to work with artificial intelligence and in tech-intensive advanced manufacturing?
So that's interesting because I mentioned that hard scrabble business. We had roughly 20 employees for 17 years. I can tell you that we, I think, upgraded to Radio Shack. At the end of that 17-year spread, it was mostly manual on documents, on accounting, everything. And when finally I knew I had a scalable business in 2 pretty mundane, low-margin areas of trucking, which is logistics, warehousing, distribution, the fancy names for it, between 98 and 08, we had to upgrade. And I constantly complained about the cost of it, and it changed every 3 years until our current chief technology officer, my older son, who was trained by my younger brother, convinced me. And of our 1,500 employees now across the country, this will surprise you, 50 of them are custom coders. That's a lot. And we built from jumping from Radio Shack to Great Plains, crafted a unique system, and it's probably doubled or tripled the profit margin. It's been the reason we've been able to grow the business. And now you've got things like AI. Government is totally underutilizing technology. It's probably worse in DC than it is even here. Not to mention that it's now the way of life. You look at rural broadband. If you don't have high-speed internet in every nook and cranny in our state, we're going to see that the counties that are flat or losing population will continue to do it. So technology, especially high-speed internet, is important. And again, we're doing okay there, but we can do better.
Indiana's maternal and infant mortality rate has exceeded the national average since at least the 1990s. For every 1,000 births in 2022, 7 infants died before their first birthday, putting Indiana at the 7th highest position for infant mortality in the nation. Rural Hoosiers and Hoosiers of color, in particular, experience inadequate maternal and infant health care due to a lack of physicians, hospitals, and specialty services. How can we improve Indiana's maternal and infant health outcomes while also reducing racial and geographic disparities?
That is a shameful statistic, and especially when you juxtapose it to having some of the highest healthcare costs in the country. Probably the proudest thing I've done in business or politics would be taking on cost of healthcare back in '08. We did that before the law required you to cover pre-existing conditions. I was sick and tired of hearing how lucky our business was. It's only going up 5 to 10%. When healthcare costs that much, it's going to be less available to everyone. Everyone deserves it, regardless of ethnicity, station in life. I think the other side of the aisle owns that issue. We were flat-footed when we didn't have any alternative to the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. We were defending a broken system. I intend to take that on as our next governor, and if you get it right, where it's based upon prevention, remediation, generally getting better ways that we actually run our own lives to keep ourselves healthy, and then not demand expensive, immediate remediation, you'll actually get at the roots of things like infant and maternal mortality. So it generally doesn't get addressed at the state level because one part of the spectrum wants the federal government to do it all. That's not a solution when we're going broke there. Our side thinks there's nothing wrong, and I know it can be improved. So that's taking on the biggest industry in our state. It's approaching now 20% of our GDP. Back when I wrestled with it, it was closer to probably 10. So something's got to give. And if we're a state, again, that you're going to want your own kids to move back to, you can't have a statistic like that. I was glad to see that in the last session, we took a step towards acknowledging it. Then we got to be entrepreneurial because it's in a context of a really expensive, clumsy delivery system, and I need to get big healthcare to come the way of making that more doable.
So let's turn to housing. Indiana has a deficit of nearly 140,000 affordable and available rental homes, with only 34 units available for every 100 of the lowest income households, the second lowest rate in the Midwest. Additionally, in the last year alone, Indiana had nearly 71,000 eviction filings, nearly 1 in 10 Hoosier renter households. What investments are needed, and as governor, what strategies would you employ to make housing more affordable in our state?
So affordable housing along with childcare, rural broadband, that was that second tier of what I hear about, underneath education and healthcare. So I'm going to look at the entrepreneurs out there that build the homes, that tell me that a lot of regulation coming from DC has added maybe 10% to the cost of homes, well intended, but it even exacerbates it to make it more out of reach. A local entrepreneur that runs the Cook Medical Group that has elevated that to his mission. How do you get an affordable 3-bedroom home built on a slab of 1,700 square feet that actually could be a starter home, which means 185 to maybe 2.25. Well, that's been out of reach with inflation. He found a way to do it actually during COVID. Has actually done it in Spencer, French Lick or West Baden, and Bloomington. So it can be done. But businesses who benefit from the workforce are going to have to be part of the equation, just like they need to be part of the equation when it comes to workforce training. Don't expect government to do it all and then complain about the fact your taxes are going up. So I will take an entrepreneurial approach, make sure that our state government isn't doing things to make it harder. I'll look at permitting, all the things where contractors have to interface with our own state government. Keep the practical stuff in place, speed it up, but try to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit, the problem solvers. And what he found is if you could get local jurisdictions to help stub into utilities, it took enough cost out of that home to where you could do it at an affordable price. So maybe learn from what a brilliant entrepreneur did to tell us what can be done.
According to the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority Housing Dashboard, the homeownership rate for Black Hoosiers was 38% in 2022, compared to 75% for white Hoosiers. Black Hoosiers have been the only racial group to experience a decline in their homeownership rate since 2012, due, in part, to past discriminatory practices and policies. As governor, what steps would you take to increase homeownership opportunities, especially for Black Hoosiers?
Well, I would hope there's not a vestige of discrimination or bias left that would contribute to that. If that's the case, if it's out there, it's got to go. A lot of what I think on any of the groups that are struggling to get into home ownership, it's largely related to workforce development. There's 140,000 jobs out there that need a better skills-based K through 12 education. Finally, we're getting a diploma that recognizes it. And if we get that balance right for the high demand, high wage jobs, the highest paid employee from a company that's really gotten workforce down to an art is Toyota. It's not someone on the line, it's the repair person that gets the biggest wage. And that's going to be similar to what middle management would get in a company. So much of eliminating that has to do with how do we get our educational system in a better place to where it's getting our kids guided into the high demand, high wage jobs, put parents in the driver's seat to where they got choices along that way, but don't misguide kids into what now directs half of them towards a 4-year degree, only, or nearly about 50%, half of whom don't get a degree, and they've wasted time and money. I'm going to work hard on that. I think that is doable. That addresses a lot of the inequities, I think, that are at the entry level or where people want to get to first base.
So let's talk a little bit about childcare. The first 5 years of a child's life are critical for brain development of our young Hoosiers. Research shows that access to affordable, quality childcare can enable more people to work. To set the stage for Hoosier children's future educational success, how should families' access to high-quality care and learning opportunities be expanded?
So, I remember back 40-some years ago, Kimball's, a big company from Jasper, provided it. Then there, I think, were issues with, well, you didn't need it. There were enough enterprisers out there that, I remember when with 4 kids, taking them to maybe one place. That's pandemonium. That's not going to work. They probably entered into liability issues, and we got away from it. If we're going to tease more people back into the workforce, it's now real. I go back to visit our own school district about 6 to 9 months ago. They're providing childcare to get teachers and retain them. So we need, again, the entities that want workforce need to be willing to scramble to see how to do it. I don't think we want the state government to run it. We want to make sure that they've got a platform of regulations and guidelines that will make it easy. But I would say enterprising businesses that will be the beneficiaries of it need to get more involved in it. Businesses got to be careful. If they complain about taxes and too much government, but you still want it, you better start being innovative on your own account. That's the way I've run my business for 37 years before I got sworn in as senator. And that is something, even though 3 of my 4 kids are running it now, I think they're entertaining, and they'd want to make sure that they're not going to be fraught with complications that our own state would put in place, or being subject to, maybe a legal system that would be looking for ways to make that difficult.
As in the rest of the country, Hoosiers are experiencing the ever larger effects of a changing climate, including more extreme and frequent weather events. Multiple surveys have found that most Hoosiers, regardless of political party, support policies that help address climate change and do more to develop alternative energy sources. What policies do you think are needed to address climate change?
Well, something I did that was unexpected, and it was only 6 months after I got into the U.S. Senate. Senator from Delaware, Chris Coons, had been trying for 2 years to get a climate caucus started. A caucus means you have to have somebody from the other side. Well, when you're down to a freshman senator, that's getting desperate, number one, and that means everyone else said no. I didn't hesitate then. Get a few texts from back home, have you gone to the dark side, what are you doing? Well, on issues like climate or healthcare, or a lot of the things we as a party nationally choose not to get put it on the table. I say you're going to be on the menu politically, and you may not like the policy. Then we complain about it. So that has been an interesting discussion, that if you don't like the Green New Deal, you still know that something's afoot, well, what's your response going to be? That has changed so much from July or August of 19. It's been the most active caucus by far in the U.S. Senate, and it puts me in an excellent place to discuss it. In the last 2-3 months, we've had all the leaders on nuclear technology, which was taboo on the other side of the aisle. Well, they want lower greenhouse gases. You're not going to get it all with windmills and solar. That's intermittent, especially till we get battery technology to line up with the solar side. That is something I feel good that we as a state could lead on, maybe with a consortium of states, now that that is back on the table. There are other approaches like hydrogen. There's a lot of technology out there that's ready to disrupt it. If you're not in there in the conversation, again, you're not going to be crafting a solution. And I think states probably get more done there than the federal government, because remember, you need 60 senators for that. And that's going to be hard to corral in today's climate. But it's an important issue.
According to federal reporting, only 37% of all Indiana schools met or exceeded expectations during the 2022-2023 academic year. Recent state assessments also revealed that only 30% of students were proficient in math and English language arts. What should we do to improve equitable education outcomes for students across the state?
That's as appalling as the stat on infant and maternal mortality, especially when that's half of our state budget of $22 billion. So I'm a believer that you've got to have choice and competition when you're trying to do something better, especially if the status quo has not been giving you the results you're looking for. I think that's a combination of technology. It's a combination of, if you can put resources together, maybe starting the educational journey earlier, and that comes up as a discussion. And I think that's important. What we've got currently is not working. And that feeds into the workforce discussion we had. Not to mention, if you want to do something in higher education where that's required. So somehow we've got to find that sweet spot of resources. Teachers are probably underpaid. We probably put too much money in administration and buildings. All of that's got to change with the proper metrics to go along with it. Because the stats you just recited, I can tell you, a lot of our geopolitical competitors are not going to be sporting stats like that. So they've found a way to do it, and we'll need to look maybe broadly to find out what is working. I think it worked before many, many years ago. I guess you go back to the single-room schoolhouse, to where you were devoting more time and energy into the basics of education. Why it's not working now, when it seems like we'd have the resources, the technology to even make it easier, somewhere we're missing what that sweet spot is. And I think, again, that's probably crafted by entrepreneurial states. One state figures it out, shares a best practice with others. That's the kind of approach I'll take because it's been elusive and it's still ending up with stats like you just recited.
Nearly 1 in 12 Hoosiers meet the criteria for having a substance use disorder. Access to early intervention and treatment services not only saves lives, but also reduces the economic impact of addiction on the individual and the community. What can your administration do to ensure those individuals have continued access to necessary recovery and treatment services?
So when it comes to addictions, mental health, many times they're, tied at the hip together. That cat's fully out of the bag through COVID, and I think our state has recognized that. I do see a lot of efforts county by county to try to address it. When it comes to students and young people having it, that's even worse than I think what happens once you're out of school. So it's all connected together. It's finally, I think, going to get attention and resources. And I do see a lot of local areas that are trying to find that solution. I'll try to see the best of what's happening in our own state and see what is working. But I do think it's on the radar officially as something that we can't ignore to the extent we have up at least through COVID.
Indianapolis has the 5th highest imprisonment rate in the nation for black men born to low-income families. Researchers have found that racial disparities in the Indianapolis criminal justice system are a leading cause. What should be the top priority in addressing racial disparities in the Indiana justice system, and what will your administration do to implement policies to reduce them?
So when it comes to anything that would be a disparity, and again, earlier I said anything that's got any component of race, bias, discrimination, that's got to be rooted out. When it comes to the groups that seem to be disproportionately kind of dealing with those issues, we got to figure out again how we can change that from the grassroots up. But where it would be a case where it is just a practice that's occurring, that's even more shameful and will need to be remediated. How much attention's been paid to that, why that's occurring in Indianapolis as opposed to other places. It's its own jurisdiction, which I think at some point that if you got issues in any part of our state that seem to be a struggle. It happened in Gary, it happened in Muncie when we had to take over those school systems because they just weren't working. And when it comes to our own state capital, it's run as a separate political entity. You'd hope that the broader government would be interested in trying to find out a way to help, even if it's administered through a separate political division. But that, again, is something that you can't stick your head in the sand about. And I would try to find the root cause of it and see what the proper combination of remediation is.
So let's wrap up with a final question about young voter engagement. Indiana is historically among the bottom states in voter participation, particularly for young voters. Has your campaign engaged young voters during this election cycle, and what can be done to increase voting in our elections?
I've been lucky since I'm, I guess, not your cardboard cutout politician. Came from, I call it the real world, and got involved in politics later on. That's attracted a broad group of entrepreneurs, ethnicities, just age levels with a heavy emphasis on young people because they see something different. And I think to engage youth to vote is going to be similar in terms of how you engage youth to maybe be more interactive in their own decisions they need to make from the time they're thinking about it, especially by the time you're done with high school. To me, we're a state that you've got many ways to vote. You can do it early. You got about 12, 13 ways to ask for an absentee ballot. any party that's not, or that is afraid of engaging a broader array of people into the system probably needs to look at its own policies to see why that may not be the case. All I can say in my political campaigns, I've been blessed to where I've had a broad array of people that have been willing to be part of it. So I'll probably look there to see what you can do to parlay that into policy that hopefully would get some of the disturbingly low voter participation rates up to a higher level.
Great. Senator Mike Braun, thank you for joining us. We deeply appreciate it and wish you good luck in the rest of your campaign.
You're welcome, and it was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us for these important discussions with the candidates for Indiana's governor. One of them will be elected to lead our state for the next 4 years, and it is my hope that these conversations will help inform your decision this November. To the candidates, Dr. McCormick, Senator Braun, and Mr. Rainwater, we wish you the best of luck and thank you for joining us. A special thanks to the Heron School of Art and Design at IU Indianapolis, and especially the school's dean, Greg Hall, for their gracious accommodations and support. A special thanks also goes to the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, whose students, faculty, staff, and alumni continue to make this forum an important event during the fall gubernatorial campaign cycle. And to the incredibly hardworking staff of the IU Public Policy Institute and our O'Neill Marketing and Communications team. You can learn more about the policy briefs used to inform our discussions at policyinstitute.iu.edu. If you have not registered to vote, the deadline to do so in Indiana is Monday, October 7th. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. No matter for whom you cast your ballot, please exercise your right to vote. Once again, thank you for joining us.